person like none other before, a person who has stood with us and for us, the governor of the state of Hawaii, Lingle.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. Thanks for coming today. Thank you all very much. Senator Sloan, Representative Ward, Representative Finnegan, to all of you here at Smart Business Hawaii, thank you so much for coming to listen to a few things that are on my mind. And then I really want to interact with you in a great question and answer period. But I want to begin by thanking you for the years of support that I've received from this organization and from many of you in the room as individuals. It's made the difference, and I hope you feel it's made a difference for Hawaii. It's been a tough 2.5 years. There's no other way to describe it. Tougher for you than for anyone, because you're the ones with your own money at risk every single day. Now, people often ask me, how did you get through those tough times in the government? Well, you had $3 billion you had to make up over a 2-year period where the Council on Revenues just kept dropping their estimates of what was going to be coming in. And it was a challenging time, no question about it. In fact, imagine this. I was pining for the days of having a $250 million deficit when I came into office. I thought that would be great if I could just have that again. But here we were, $3 billion to make up over a 2-year period, and we were chasing this because each time the Council on Revenues came out, they were dropping their projections further every single time they met. And that was a challenge, but that wasn't like having your own money at risk, and you do that every single day, and I admire you very much for it. So don't let people fool you into thinking how difficult government is. You're really the ones on the front line, from my perspective, in getting through these very difficult times. We recognized during those days that we couldn't support any tax increases, that it would really break the backs of families and of small business people, so we had to make some very tough decisions, and I don't want to dwell on them, but I want to remind you of what we've all been through, what we've come through, because I see the turn starting to occur. And while I'm cautiously optimistic, clearly the turn has happened here in Hawaii. Those difficult decisions included a 14% across the board reduction in government spending, a freeze on all hiring, travel, elimination of programs, restructuring the government's debt. We closed that gap in tax collections by focusing on people who were not paying their fair share. I've always believed that while I'd like to keep taxes to a minimum, I also want to make certain everyone pays their fair share, because if they don't, that means the rest of us pay more than our fair share. And so the government implemented a computer program with no upfront cost on behalf of the government. We have collected to date through that system. Again, these are not people who were late in their taxes and we were going after them to pay up. These were people who were failing to file at all. And they were caught through the computerization that we underwent with no upfront cost. So far, we've collected $100 million, and with a cap to the company that brought that in through their computer program, a cap of $25 million to them. Through June of 2011, we'll collect another $20 million, but again, they're capped at that $25 million. So that was important to do so that taxpayers knew we weren't leaving money out in the community that was really owed to the public, so that you didn't have to pay more than your fair share. But as you know, except for Jack Schneider's approach of just contract with him for all your employees, for many companies, employees do make up a majority of your direct cost, and that's certainly true of the government. They make up 60% of the cost in our state general fund. And so that meant when you're chasing $3 billion, there has to be some serious adjustment in those labor costs in order to get through it, unless you're willing to raise taxes, which Duke and I were not willing to do. That meant for us furloughs, and it meant layoffs. More layoffs than had ever occurred in state government history. It wasn't something we were happy to do or we were proud to do, and while I know there are many smaller government advocates, and I am certainly among those advocates, and I respect your point of view. It doesn't make it easier to tell a person you're not going to be able to make your mortgage payment. I know your family was counting on your check, but you can't stay here anymore in the government because we can't afford you. That is not an easy thing to do. And anyone who has ever done it and not had a difficult time doing it, I sort of wonder about that person, frankly. What kind of a person are they that they're not upset having to tell a head of a household, you just won't have the money that your family had been counting on this month? It was not an easy thing to do, but it was necessary. And my commitment was to the general public, to maintain fiscal integrity, not to have the huge tax increases that other states were having at that time. And I think the fact that we started to move earlier than most states also saved us during that very difficult period. So through that combination of debt restructuring, of furloughs, of some layoffs, of across-the-board cuts, we were able to get through that period. As an example of the government at the federal level and their size and their mentality, I want to share something you may have read about in the paper recently. There was an article yesterday or the day before about the federal government trying to reach into our state government and tell us how many employees we should hire. Now, this is not unusual for this current administration to do. It's a pattern, in fact, to come to me as a governor and say, you don't have enough inspectors, enough HIOSH or OSHA inspectors. You need to have more inspectors out inspecting businesses in order to keep the employees safe. And if you don't hire more people, we're going to start to cut your funds. They're coming into the state of Hawaii in writing to tell us that. And they say you've reduced the number of employees you have, you need to bulk up with more employees. Now this during a time when we have just come off of closing this $3 billion gap in projected revenues. This from an administration that simply will go out and print money, as we say it, or sell more government debt, put the next generation further into debt, having current year growing deficits and telling me in Hawaii, I want you to hire more inspectors or we're going to cut your federal funding. Well, you can imagine my reaction to that. But here's their mentality. They're saying you have to hire more inspectors because you haven't had enough inspections. And my approach and your approach would be, but what have the results been because you had fewer inspectors and fewer inspections? Because all of us are for employee safety. We're for safety for all of our citizens. So let me share with you what our results have been. Those of you who have followed our Department of Labor, you know we've been a shift from previous departments of labor because we believe our obligation is to the businesses as well as the employees, because without the businesses being healthy, there's no place for the employees to work. And that was a real change in thinking, because previously labor had only been about the employees. So what we said is we're going to work on voluntary compliance. We're going to have more outreach with the businesses, more education for the businesses. We're going to ask them to call us to come out and do voluntary inspections. They won't get fined as long as they correct within a certain number of days. And I want you to know that that approach has worked. The most visible aspect of that outreach and education, you may remember from a few years ago, called the tie-off campaign for people who were working in tall buildings. Make certain that they were using the safety equipment that they were supposed to be, do it for themselves, do it for their family. We had some great commercials on TV. Well, we have cut the number of inspectors by at least 1/3 over the past few years. Let me read you some facts. In 2006, this is from our State Department of Labor, there were reported what they count as 13 accidents, 6 fatalities, and 7 serious injuries. That was in 2006. 13 accidents, 6 fatalities, 7 serious injuries. In 2009, with substantially fewer inspectors, instead of 13 accidents, there were 11. Instead of 6 fatalities, there were 5. Instead of 7 serious injuries, there were 6. The point being, with fewer inspections, fewer inspectors, actually the numbers of people hurt, injured, killed on the job went down. And yet the federal government is saying, but you have to have more employees. They didn't say anything in their letter about the results. They didn't even give us that opportunity, and that's a difference in mindset. And as I said to you, my obligation is not to the federal government, it's not to labor unions, it's to the general public, and I've kept my focus there.